Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing marvelously well. I'm sitting here with my rather good friend, Mr. Kristian. Kohle. Kristian, how the devil are you?
I'm fantastic. We got some good news, right?
We've got some very, very good news. You know, you're one of the few people that works in the metal genre that gets it all, as far as I'm concerned. You still like to record drums with real microphones. You still like to use amps, but you're also smart enough to know where amp sims are being used, when to use samples, and I like that because it kind of crosses everything. I still am in love with classic metal records from when I grew up. You know, the new wave of British metal is my age group. Iron Maiden is still one of my favorite bands. You know, Sabbath will always be one of my favorite bands. But I love what you do because you connect me to the past and the present and the future all at once. So this is exciting what you're about to do. You are launching the Kohle Audio Kult.
Yes, I am. Which is an academy I've been working on for quite some time. It's an academy about making metal records. We try to cover the entire process of making productions, albums, records, recording, producing, mixing, mastering, and even before recording, like whatever. If you want to record drums, you got to find the right cymbals. You got to tune the drums. You got to set things up. You got to find the right amp or the right amp plugin, whatever. So we want to show like the entire process, not only mixing or mastering, everything. I also want to be a bridge between those two worlds. Let's say the modern way of working and the old school way of working, digital and analog, plugins and outboards, IRs, Kemper profiles, but also tube amps, like get it all together, show people the beauty of both worlds.
Probably most importantly, from my perspective, is encouraging the creativity, the individuality, because quite often what I hear is, dare I say, a lot of people's productions and mixes which sounds identical, like they're all using the same drum sample, they're all using the same amp sim, whatever's, you know, hip this week. Everything is edited to within an inch of its life. So yeah, it can sound loud and percussive and destructive and all of the brutal, as you would say. However, it starts to get very boring when everybody's production is identical.
Generic is the key word, I guess.
Yes.
So that's one more thing we're trying to do. So we're trying to cover a wide range of genres. So it goes all the way from heavy rock to very extreme metal, but also to modern metal. I have no problems with samples and with editing and so on, but I want to show that there's more. And you're right. I want to inspire people to try other stuff. And that's why we want to show, just work with a lot of people coming from different directions of the heavy universe. Like I said, like it starts with whatever, hard rock, AC/DC kind of heavy, up to brutal death metal and anything in between, because people work very differently, you know, between those genres, and we want to cover it all.
Everything I've seen has been absolutely superb. We inhabit a space where we do this for a living. You know, all this gear that I have and the gear that you have was bought from actually making records. And I think it's a blessing to be able to do this for a living and then give back and show how we got those funny looking records on the wall and stuff like that. I think it's an important part of the process to actually be living, making music, and then give back and say, this is how I got here and this is how I stay here still.
All I'm doing in this academy is actually showing what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years. I've been making records all the time. Some were successful. Most of them were not, you know, working with countless bands. And you know how it is, you know, like, and I was forced, or whatever, lucky, to work with a lot of different metal genres, from old school to new school. So, and I think that is how you learn a lot. So not just doing your own, not just you know, you're repeating the same way of working all the time, but like just being forced to, you know, to try different stuff. And that's what I'm basically putting into this academy. And I'm inviting other people for the stuff that I can't do.
No, you can do it. I know you and I know how talented you are, and so it's very humble of you. I think what you're doing is you're bringing in other mentors to give different perspectives, because there are 100 different ways to do every job, you know? Yeah. I've done videos on stringing guitars and been told by 25 different guitar techs, that their way, which is different to mine, is the best way. The reality is there's so many different ways to do our job, and it's always wonderful to be able to present all of those different perspectives, because then something might appeal to you. And I think one of the things talking about that is community, or as you call it inside the Kohle audio cult, communion. And
Yes.
there's definitely an emphasis. There's the gospel, there's the communion. And that's really important to me. I've known through my experience with Produce Like a Pro Academy is the power is in the fact that everybody helps each other out.
That's what we're trying to create. Like one side of the academy is all the courses, my courses and other mentors' courses. The other side is building a great community. So we're trying to get the metal version of Produce Like a Pro, more or less. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping for, that there will be, and I'm pretty sure that's going to happen, that there will be a lot of creative people coming together, doing great stuff together. And you're absolutely right about having different perspectives. So in the Kohle audio cult, like there's one part that we call the gospel, and those are the bread and butter courses, so to say, where you have different chapters. It's very organized, and that's what I basically do there. So you click on drums, and then you get a drum chorus, then you can click on snare drum, and then you learn something about snare drums. You click on toms and so on, and you really learn everything from the ground up. And that's one part. And then we have other bigger courses, sometimes coming from me, but mostly from other people, that bring in some fresh air from different directions.
For instance, you went to the Czech Republic and filmed. I mean, tell us a little bit about that, because that's a whole recording you did, and you filmed the whole thing. It's pretty insane what the gear they had and everything.
We're starting with 3 big courses in the first month. Later, the plan is to have like 1 bigger course every month, but for the beginning, we have 3 of them. One is me going to a big studio in the Czech Republic, a studio from the 90s, designed by Andy Monroe, the founder of Dan Audio Acoustics.
Wow.
With a great sounding live room and a big SSL, and really like high-end 90s studio, which isn't very typical for these days. But I wanted to do something that is not typical, because I wanted to record a metal band live, at least the instruments. And I teamed up with No Turning Back, which is a well-respected Dutch hot punk hardcore band, very energetic, raw-sounding band. So it was like, okay, does it make it better? Because I love their live shows. So how does it sound if we actually capture their performance? Because nobody is doing that in metal. And so it turned out they were playing a few shows in Czech Republic. We met there for a few days and tracked an EP, which is an actual EP. So it's going to be released. But people in the academy can be a fly on the wall and can be a part of the whole recording process. And actually, in 3 weeks, I think, we will continue with that, and we'll record the vocals here at Kohle Studios, and people can follow that again, and then they can see me mixing that album, and then it will be released. But people also get the multi-track, so they can work on an album that is not even released and be a part of it, so to say. So
that's huge.
That was just such a cool thing to do.
No, it's huge, and that's what I want. I want to go to somewhere where I can be involved in the whole stage of it and know everything that's going on. Because every time you go to a different studio, you use maybe some of the same miking techniques, but they have different mics, they have different sounding rooms, obviously, different drummers, different drums, different mic pre's, different everything. And so you adapt. And sometimes by adapting, you learn, well, not sometimes, all the times you learn new techniques.
But you know what? I'm not even used to recording bands live, because you mostly don't do that. So that was an experiment, not only the studio, but the whole thing. But I can already say it turned out pretty cool. We can have a look if you want. Here we are, Studio Propast. Took us a day to come here, but this is a really cool place, as you can see. They're both good. It was hard to tell which one was the vintage 30 and which one is the Fane speaker, but I'm surprised. Both speakers sound okay. I just moved the mics a little to make them sound a little darker, but let's have another listen. Let's try the other cabinet. So now let's listen to Celestion Redback speakers. I'm a little afraid, but let's wait and see. Try. Interesting how different the same type of speakers can sound. Okay, one of the Redbacks actually sounds quite cool. This one. Maybe a little honky, but the other one. It's rather nasty. Let's try moving the mics. So we just checked out the cabinets because, as you know, it's the first time I'm using those cabinets, and I can say they sound pretty fucking awesome so far. And especially because there are some speakers in them that I've never heard before, I wanted to test them before the band arrives. So I had my colleague or assistant Daniel, who is also working in the background, play guitar, and we mic'd up four different speakers in two cabinets with SM57s, and it turned out all those four speakers sound kind of cool. You've seen me moving the mics a little bit, but so far I think I will just go for recording all four signals and then I will decide later which ones I will actually use. The cool thing is that they are also in phase, so they can be blended if needed. And we can have another listen now. This is the Hughes & Kettner, Tube Meister amplifier, so it's not the amp the band's gonna use, but we needed something to check this out. So this is the Vintage 30, which sounds pretty common to our ears. In the same cab, we have the Fane speaker, which sounds a little different. It's a lot more fizz in there, like it's less mid-focused than the Vintage 30. Sounds a little more open. I prefer the Vintage 30, which is just a classic sound. But they're both usable, so let's start with the V30 again. And that's the Fane. But if we blend those two together, that also seems to add up nicely. If I had to pick one, it would be the V30, but for now, why don't record both and then we have more options later. This, by the way, is the Marshall-sized cabinet. Then we have the other cabinet, which is bigger, oversized, and it only has Redback speakers. And this is interesting because I just mic'd two Redback speakers with SM57s in the same position, that's where I started, and they sound totally different. So let's listen to the good sounding Redback first. It's this one. And this is the other Redback. which sounds way brighter, has a lot more sizzle in the highs. Let me switch between them. A lot more scooped. But I gotta say that the good sounding Redback speaker is actually my favorite. So it's this one. It sounds kind of direct and brutal, but has enough mids. Let's go back to the V30. Which surprisingly sounds less full and a little annoying in comparison. Redback. But I think that's a cool combination. So we have one guitar with the faint speaker and the Vintage 30, and then we have the other guitar with two mics on the Redback. I might be replacing one of those 57s with another microphone. I'm not sure. In the end, it also depends on how the dual rectifiers that the guys are playing will sound through those cabs. So that was the mic setup. 3 different speakers. Pretty flexible setup. Let's see how it sounds tomorrow with the rectifiers.
Many of the mentors you have are some good friends of mine. One of those, of course, is the rather wonderful Mr. Bob Marlette, who I always think of as like the consummate professional producer, because who else in the world can produce a Black Sabbath record, an Ozzy Osbourne solo record, and a Tony Iommi solo record? That is a guy that can navigate all of different personalities. That's pretty huge.
And you remember I said we want to cover like everything from heavy rock to modern metal or extreme metal, and that is what we are doing in the first month, because we have someone like Bob, who is doing a drum course for the Academy, where he is recording drums in his dining room. And at the same time, in the first month, we have another course, which is a mastering metal course with no other than Ermin Hamidovic, who's known for mastering fantastic sounding albums from Periphery and Architects and North Lane. And, so he's known for doing very modern, djenty metal productions. He's mastering one song from Silosis, British metalcore band that I guess everybody knows. But we also gave him 5 songs from Kult members from the Academy. So, and he's in the course, he's listening to those 5 mixes and picks one of them and masters that one. And that is also a very important thing for me, that we're not only doing this ivory tower, mixing and mastering like great sounding tracks, but that we're also inviting everybody to send in their mixes. So we're doing Q&As, we're doing mix reviews, and we're trying to get the other, like the mentors, in touch with Academy members' mixes. So, that's what makes it interesting.
Look, I watched his mastering course. You sent it to me a couple of weeks ago, and it's phenomenal. He's a born educator. And such a sweet guy. He's really super well-rounded and really balanced in his approach. Yeah, really, really great guy.
Impressive guy. Let's have a look at the course.
My name is Ermin, and I've been working with metal bands as a producer and engineer for nearly 20 years. In 2014, I transitioned to full-time mastering, and that's what we'll be covering today. In this course, we'll be going over what mastering actually is, dispelling misconceptions, getting you familiar with different formats, workflow, and finally showing how you can use powerful, entirely in-the-box chains to master your music. We'll be analyzing 5 mixes provided by Kohle Audio Cult members and then picking one to take through the mastering process together. After this, I'll be showing you a world-class mastering process thanks to a track provided by my friend Josh from Silosis. Okay, so let's run through the typical digital plugin chain that I'll use in a completely ITB master. As we stipulated at the beginning of this course, this is to showcase the power of modern-day, completely software-based mastering. So generally speaking, I'll begin with a broad strokes, tonal palette sort of broad aesthetic shaping EQ that I'll pull up as much for its saturation or its general sound as I will for the actual sound of the filter shapes. I tend to like the Acoustica Audio EQs for this a lot due to their own proprietary Volterra kernel based modeling technology. So you can think of them as dynamic impulse responses. To me, it captures the essence of analog EQs better than any other plugin manufacturer on the market currently, so I tend to like these to open up with. It's a really good way to inject some flavor into the master before we move on to the corrective portion. So the corrective portion can be handled with a bunch of different EQs. I have Crave EQ here. You can use FabFilter's Pro Q3, the old Sony Oxford EQs, DMG Audio Equality. I mean, the sky's the limit. Whatever works for you, so long as it's a flexible digital corrective EQ. Now, the reason that we're running it through these two processes is that we're trying to make the mix more portable and essentially prepared for the broadband compressor section. I tend to be a big fan of the old SSL bus compressor style compression. 90% of the time on metal, that tends to work for me really, really well. Whether it be FG Grey, the Townhouse is really, really good. Whether it be the analog GSSL, Allen Smart, or whatever, but we're not dealing with the analog in this test. Ultimately, you can use whatever you want. You can use Fairchild style compression. You can use old Opto style. You can use FET style. You can do like Focusrite Red style. This is really where you showcase your own personality as a mastering engineer. Obviously, there are some high-grade mastering analog EQs you can pick up if you really want to take this seriously, but a really good starting point is something like the BX Townhouse bus compressor on sale. It's very, very cheap, and it's very, very flexible and very, very easy to dial as well, as we'll get into once we start the actual mastering process. After this, we move on to the saturation section. Now, as strange as it may be, my favorite saturator for mastering purposes is Saturn II. Not necessarily because of its tone or because of the algorithm underneath it, but because of its tonal flexibility. I'll show you how I dial this once we begin the actual mastering process. After the saturation, we move on to the actual maximizer portion. As you can see, I'll load up a bunch of different options. The one that we'll be spending the majority of our time on, of course, is Flatline. That would be my company's Clipper style maximizer. Now, one of the great things about Flatline is behind the scenes, we're always working on new feature additions, one of which currently is intelligent maximization algorithms. So for people that want something that's more set and forget, clip resistant, and kind of more modern in nature, as much as I might think the old sounds of the bee's knees, we're actually going to offer that in due time as well. So this is why we'll be using Flatline as our flagship mastering maximizer for these mastering demos. Here is the Weiss, which I occasionally pull up for really brutal down-tuned material. The Ozone is a classic that I've used for many, many years. And of course, the Pro L2, which is probably the most ubiquitous limiter in the modern industry that everybody seems to either mix or master into these days. And the digital clipping you shouldn't worry about because that's just the loopbacks. You can actually hear what I'm running through in the DAW. The reason that I've chosen this Wintertide track is because it's fairly representative of a reasonable delivery spec when it comes to day-to-day mastering. It's not obnoxiously out, it's just kind of a little bit dull, it's a little bit flat, but the low end sounds like it's been well controlled and the mix sounds quite in balance with itself, which makes it a really good candidate for mastering because we should be able to pull out some pretty hefty moves but still maintain some pretty strong mix integrity. So we'll be working against the flatness, trying to add some air and sizzle in there, and also opening up the low end a little bit, so it should be pretty fun. If you want to hear this master at every single stage of processing, you can. I'll be exporting it post-EQ, raw, post-EQ and compression, post-EQ and maximization. You'll be able to kind of follow along with my moves at every part of the process for when you try and match this master yourself. So I think a really good candidate to open up with here will be one of my favorite EQs, the Ivory M2. This tends to be very sizzly the moment you throw the pre in. It can subdue the low end a little bit, which sometimes can work against you, but I'll take a listen and see whether this is the way to go or not. I mean, it does the right thing to the highs. It might maybe neuter the lows a little bit too much, but we'll see how we go. We'll set it up to be a shelf starting about 12K. That should be quite sizzly. Okay, so opening up the highs, making them a little bit more glassy is a good first step, but there's obviously a lot more work to be done here. I don't really want to do it through boosts though. From what I can hear, got to get it out of there. But let's start about 2 dB. bear in mind when it comes to the Ivory M2, it's a lot more aggressive than the controls would suggest. So plus 1 dB there on the low end is actually significantly more than that. So this record, or this song rather, is quite muted in the sub low end.
People get the tracks from Bob Marlette. You can mix it yourself. You even get some drum samples from him. Again, same with Ermin. You can like follow every step of his mastering chain. You also get the files from my live recording, so people can really, get their hands on all those tracks and be a part of those courses.
Don't you do a mix of the drums that Bob recorded? Don't you?
Yeah, at least I do I'm unpacking them and I'm doing a mix. I just have the drums, so it's not a final mix, obviously, because it's just drums. But he has some miking techniques that are actually very different from how I do it. So you see me learning from him. The technique that Bob is using is actually well suited for modern metal, where you really need those cymbals to cut through a dense mix. So I was thinking, I was actually afraid when he showed his technique in the beginning of the course. I was like, isn't that gonna sound phasey in the end? But no, it doesn't. And it's just very interesting, even not only for recording whatever Ozzy Osbourne drums, but also for recording modern metal drums. And now we come back to where we were in the beginning, that you can get inspiration, and you should get inspiration from other places, So, the modern metal guys should watch Bob's course, and the old school guys should also watch Ermin's mastering course. That's how you learn something.
So, Kristian, how do you join your lovely Kohle Audio Cult Academy? Metal.
Everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome. We have a 3-month and a yearly subscription right now. And we're not offering a monthly because I want people to learn something. And in 1 month, you just don't learn that much. So I want people to stay at least for 3 months, or hopefully even longer. But if that's too much for some people, we are also simply selling the bigger courses separately. So if you don't want to be a part of the community, if you don't need the rest, if you just want to have Ermin's mastering course, you can buy it. If you just want to have my live recording course, you can buy it. If you just want to have Bob's course, and so on, you can just buy it. So if you're not sure if you really want to subscribe, that's maybe a softer transition.
A nice entry into the world of the Kohle Audio Cult.
The most evil academy the world has ever seen.
The most evil academy, yes. I don't think I do it justice with my Kohle Audio Cult.
We can distort your voice in post. That's no problem.
Distort me, Eric. Give me some big reverb and distortion there. Thanks, Kristian. I really appreciate it. Please check out the link below to the Kohle Audio Cult, also to Kristian's channel. I know many of you already follow Kristian, and this is a natural extension of his brilliance. Just don't tell him I said that. Oh, I mean, his fairly okayness.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Always wonderful chatting with you. It was great having you come over during NAMM, and hopefully we'll see you again soon in lovely Los Angeles.
Yeah, I'll be back to Los Angeles, and everybody else, I hope I see you inside the cult.
So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen,
Bye-bye.
au revoir, Tutsins, ciao, tschüss, goodbye.